one of the really striking things about the survey, and as you move through the data, I think you'll see this yourselves, is the extraordinary difficulty that the U.S. has had in translating its support for political change in the Arab world into improved opinions of the United States among Arabs. Shibli, you noted a number of variables in which opinion of the U.S. seems to have improved. And yet, there's also data that suggests that the Arab Spring dividend continues to be very, very elusive. And let me just give you one or two quick examples. I don't want to take too much time because I do want to jump to the discussion. The U.S. has been very explicit in its support for political change associated with these uprisings. On May 19th, President Obama described the uprisings as an historic opportunity. He said it was a chance for us to persuade the Arab world that we care as much about vendors, fruit vendors, as we do about autocrats. We have been enormously supportive of regime change in Syria and in Yemen. You showed the size of the majorities that support regime change in those two countries, or should support the protesters in those two countries. The U.S. has been explicit in supporting protesters and explicit in supporting regime change in both Syria and Yemen. And yet, as you said, next to Israel, the U.S. continues to be regarded as the single biggest threat to countries in the Arab world. Some 60%, 59–60% of Arabs continue to view the U.S. unfavorably. And one of the findings, the question in relation to what the Arab world thinks animates U.S. engagement in the region, you mentioned that there's a sense that many in the Arab world continue to think that what's most important in driving U.S. policy is control of oil and defending Israel. But what you didn't point out, and I thought this was, given the emphasis of U.S. policy over the last year, what was really striking, less than 5% of Arabs who responded believe that democracy is a key priority of the U.S. Less than 5% believe that promoting human rights is a priority of the United States. And so, to the extent that we anticipated that the Arab Spring, the awakenings, offered us an opportunity to realign how the Arab world thinks about the United States, the data make clear how compelling some of those gaps continue to be. And I'll just one more word. What's also, I think, especially interesting is some of the information you conveyed about Palestine and attitudes towards Palestine. 90% of Arabs in the survey continue to identify Palestine as one of the top 3 political issues that they care most about. As you saw from Shibli's presentation, the one thing that the U.S. could do that would most improve its standing in the region is to broker a peace agreement along very particular lines, 67 boundaries, Jerusalem is the capital of Palestine, and so on. The second most important thing the U.S. could do to improve its standing is cut off aid to Israel. And so we get this sense, I think, coming out of this survey, that in many ways, and I'm a little reluctant to draw the conclusion in a decisive fashion, but in many ways, you get the sense that low levels of trust in the U.S. in the Arab world, and our performance, at least as perceived in the Arab world on the Palestine issue, constitutes a significant constraint on the capacity of the U.S. to achieve the gains that we hoped our support for the Arab Spring would be able to deliver.